Good morning. Some final points regarding Libbun and Hagala before we move on to the application of all what we've learned this week to practical appliances around the kitchen. So firstly, how do we define what Libbun is? We've said so far that it's a very intense kind of kashering and it's the most intense one. And how is this done in practice? So the Gemara tells us two different places that either this means a heat so intense that sparks emerge from this process, or until almost a peel is removed from the appliance. In practice, what does that mean nowadays? The poskim basically say this is somewhere between 350 to 400 degrees, so a very high temperature. Now, it should be noted very briefly in parentheses that there are opinions which say that although Libbun is needed when something, as we know, is absorbed in dry heat, but that's only at the same temperature in which it was absorbed in. So in a barbecue, if the temperature was 100 degrees or something, it would suffice to expel it at 100 degrees. In practice, that's not what generally we take on. We take on that whenever something has absorbed heat in a forbidden taste, then it needs to actually go through the process of Libbun, which is this very intense and high kashering process, which for some things simply doesn't work because it's too intense and will just destroy the thing. Hagala, however, is just the immersing of something in hot water or boiling it in hot water. And there is a fundamental difference between these two processes, which bear out in a few practical ramifications. Libbun, the understanding is that it completely destroys anything remaining in the utensil. Whereas Hagala, the idea is that the heat expels the taste comes out again. And there are therefore a number of practical ramifications as a result of this distinction. Firstly, when it comes to Hagala, the Shulchan Aruch rules that everything has to be cleaned, the utensil has to be cleaned, and there can't be any rust on the utensil. Because in order for the heat to get to the entire pot, it has to be clean so that when you are heating it up and trying to expel the taste, then it can reach all parts of the utensil. Whereas Libbun, we don't find that same necessity to do so because it's understood that Libbun is a more intense one and has the ability to destroy everything. The second ramification as a result of this distinction is that the Shulchan Aruch rules that in the first instance, one needs to wait 24 hours from when a pot or from when a utensil has been used before doing Hagala to it. What's the reason for this? Because there is a question the Rishonim ask, and that is, Hagala, as we said, expels the taste through the heat. But as soon as it's expelled, it's still boiling, the pot's still hot. Why does the pot then not reabsorb the taste? So one understanding in the Rishonim, Rashi says, is that because the heat is being used to expel the taste, it doesn't then have the ability to reabsorb it. And on this understanding, there's no need to wait 24 hours. However, the second understanding is that the reason why we're not concerned about the reabsorption of the taste after it comes out is that the water is assumed to be 60 times the volume of the flavor that it's purging from the utensil. And therefore, the flavor from the walls of the utensil becomes nullified upon being extracted. But that's the assumption that it's 60 times the volume of the flavor. That's not always the case. And therefore, based on this, the Shulchan Aruch writes that one should wait 24 hours before kashering with Hagala. Because like this, even if the taste is reabsorbed, it's going to be coming in as noten tam lifgam, as a taste after 24 hours, which is no longer considered a favorable or a beneficial taste. And only when something absorbs a good taste, and then after 24 hours, then it's a problem. But if it absorbed in the first instance a taste which was already had been in the walls 24 hours and then goes back in, that's not something we're concerned about. And so this is the reason why we in the first instance, unless one knows for sure that it's 60 times the amount of the water than the flavor in the walls, why we wait 24 hours before doing Hagala, something which is not necessary with Libbun. So those are the basic principles with regards to Kashering. And B'ezrat Hashem, next week we'll turn to discussing some practical appliances of all of this.